You're not ready for love. You just want to be picked, chosen, validated. You want somebody to look at you and appreciate you completely and feel that you're the most wonderful person in the world. You want to feel accepted completely. You want somebody to choose you out of everybody, to tell you that you're awesome and that you're enough. Somewhere along the way, you picked up a very dangerous idea that you only get safety emotionally when somebody picks you and people love you. You didn't learn through life that you're already enough. Even more so, somebody who's like hard to impress. If you find yourself going for people that are a little avoidant or not super into you, it's almost like a challenge to get them on your side and to really appreciate you. It almost makes it like, so you, especially through TV and stuff, you get the idea that it's like a mountain to climb. It's not worth it if I don't have to earn it. So it almost confirms what you're already thinking. If they like you, it feels like it's filling that hole. Like finally you've done it. You're worthy because you can see the outside symptoms of it. You can see that they're into you. So now you finally have this measurable, quantifiable thing that validates you finally. You feel like you're healing, like it's healing you, but it's not. It's just another performance. It's just you getting them to like you. The point kind of being, if you're altering or performing at all, then that's not really just baseline you. That's not just you. You think you need to be and do all these things because somewhere along the way you gathered that pattern that you need to be a certain way, that you need to do something and get this validation. But this started way before any romantic stuff. This started way before even trying to get people to like you in school. This started way before all that. When you think about your parents, does it feel like you had to do anything specific or be a certain way to get them to accept you? Does it feel like if you just did nothing that they would be okay with that? Or if you told the absolute bluntest truth about everything and emoted however you felt in any type of way, do you feel like they would be okay with that? If the answer is no, and especially when it happened younger, then they've conditioned you to be performative for love. They've conditioned you to feel less than and want something to validate you. They've they've just patterned you into it, into a deficit, so to speak. Maybe a caregiver that rewarded you, a parent that rewarded you when you did good things, but not when you were hurting. They just wanted you to suck it up and man up, and they basically treated you like you were older than you were, and excluded certain parts of you that they didn't deem worthy. Maybe a family system that rewarded perfection or rewarded achievements, and maybe even subtly, but punished emotional needs or being emotionally conflicted or having problems emotionally. So you adapted. You learned to be easy, to go with the flow, to keep them happy. This is before you had a lot of logical thought. These are just on a gut level an infant, as a young child. You didn't know what you may have realized now, that they didn't accept you as is, if you even realized that at any point. Before you may have realized that they programmed you into thinking that you needed to do certain things just to get love or validation, just to feel like a whole human. They rewarded you being charming, helpful, pleasant, never too much emotion. If you were upset, they veered you away from that, even gently or aggressively, no matter what. Your parent was dysregulated by you having normal childhood emotions. If you're a kid and your ball popped, it would be natural to be very upset about that. So even if they meant it in a gentle way to try to make you happy again, they could have even as gently as like distracted you from it. And, oh, it's not that bad, try to get you over that. And it could have even come from a good place, but it taught you that they're only okay when, or you're only okay around others when you're easygoing and when things are going well. So in these subtle ways, you feel shame around negative emotions, what you think are negative emotions, even though they're just nature, but doing nature things. Especially for your age, it's totally okay to have big emotions. Well, when you see your parents' face contort against certain things, even a furrowed brow, something gently like that, kids pick up on that stuff and they get the feeling that, okay, no, that's not okay. That's programming. That's patterning you into disowning parts of yourself to get by, to have affinity with people, to have relationships. So to avoid abandonment, maybe not even total abandonment, but to avoid these little slight abandonments even, you became just whoever you needed to be and who you were conditioned into being. So slowly over time, they altered who you even allowed yourself to be. And a lot of these patterns we would have forgotten. You're so young. So to us, we rely on them to show us what normal is, to show us what's acceptable. So if that's acceptable to them, our worldview stems from that being okay, to hide certain things and to always be easygoing and helpful. So you slowly just embody this version that they are okay with and that they accept, so you can feel chosen, you can feel validated, you can feel safe as a kid. You need your parent on your side to feel safe. They control everything. They're the one, they give you everything. So you need them to be happy with you. So you became this polished version and you cast aside and hid away the parts that they didn't prefer. So now you're grown and just feels like normalcy to you. It feels like it's just a baseline, that it's natural to you. When if they hadn't kind of tarnished you along the way or altered your natural growth into these patterns, if they hadn't done that, those wouldn't even be thoughts that you need to be a certain way, or getting along. It wouldn't be a thought. You would just actually be authentic. So you're running around in your romantic endeavors looking for validation instead of partnership. You mistake anxiety or needing to be a certain way as chemistry or butterflies in your stomach. You may mistake somebody being distant as them being mysterious. You may mistake them being a challenge as something that you can conquer, you can win, you can do certain things and get that validation that you're seeking. Because it feels like when it's harder to get them to like you, that it means you're that much better, that you're that much more valuable, that you're completely worthy finally. So if somebody's romantically available, it's not attractive to you because it doesn't start to fill that little bit of a hole. If they're not a bit of a challenge, it might feel too easy, like you didn't earn something. Again, performative. There was no hill to climb for you to be worthy enough. So you mistake this push and pull as chemistry and the drama of it as excitement of love, when really it's kind of just a continuation. You go with what you know. It's kind of just a continuation of the pattern that your parents established with you. So you ignore steady love because it feels unfamiliar. So you second guess it and you don't vibe with it the same. And you think that that's just from you, but it's just from a pattern. Because deep down your nervous system is wired for this push and pull, this chaos, this not being enough. It's just used to that. All of your emotional patterns that your worldview is used to, they all stem from this dysfunction early on in life, this dysfunctional family dynamic. So I'm going to put it very clearly and bluntly. You're not addicted to love. You're addicted to performance. You're addicted, you're used to trying to prove that you're enough. You're addicted to pursuit and this constant search for that validation. The search is the pattern you're used to. So if you finally did conquer that and you felt like you had them, you would end up reverting slowly and surely. You would sabotage that relationship, or the heat would die down because you weren't looking for a true partner this whole time. You were just looking for that acquisition, that meeting the challenge and beating it, because that's what your parents caused you to get used to. True and emotionally secure love won't make you perform or have to prove anything. It would just look like two people meshing well. So that'll feel boring or off to you. So even if you imagine these moments where you guys just are totally connected, going through life as a team, you're not used to that. So the ideal is different from your patterned reality of what's okay. Whether or not it's truly okay, it's just okay to you because that's what you're used to. You're comfortable doing the similar things. So you're more comfortable in a relationship where the pattern is, I need to be this certain way. Real love should feel like home and not like a conquest or like you need to do something. It shouldn't trigger your fight or flight or anxiety. When true love feels genuinely comfortable and like home, well, to somebody who's used to having to perform and not being accepted fully, home feels suspicious. It feels not right. There's just something that it doesn't quite satisfy. And the thing that it's not satisfying is that pattern that you're used to. So now, what are you afraid of? Because you're not afraid of rejection as much as you're just afraid of being seen without the polish, without the performance. You're afraid of looking boring. You're afraid of looking emotional. You're afraid of just being authentic. You're afraid of being seen as is because that's how they patterned you. You're afraid of being seen when you're not, being impressive. Because it's scary to think of if you stop performing, it feels like you'll just get abandoned because that was the pattern. What if when the mask comes off, the love disappears? That's the core wound. That's the pattern. That's this fake hole that they put into you that wasn't there when you were born. So if you get this person to like you or these friends to like you, that's not healing. That's not reaching your next level. That's not growth. That's just self-abandonment in disguise. That's tying your worth to someone's inability to love properly. You don't want to be loved. You want to be awesome. You want to be great because your parents made you feel like you had to be great. Your parents caused you to doubt yourself. And so you feel like if you gain that validation from somebody else, you'll finally have something that you can grasp onto, that you feel like you are finally worthy and feel like you're enough. But here's the rub. Even if they do accept you, it'll feel great for a little while, but you still won't fully accept that because, again, that's not what you're used to. So even that won't do what you think it's going to do. That hole in you came from your early life, not from them. It was never filled by them. It was just satisfied temporarily. This incompleteness that you feel, it's those parts that you had to abandon, that you had to hide away. And nobody's love can trick you into healing that, or can heal these parts of you that you still refuse to meet because your parents refused to meet those parts and refused to accept those parts. So what's the next step? What's the way out of doing this? Well, in my experience, it's a two-pronged approach. The first one is realizing that this pattern was something added on to you, and to the degree that you can fully internalize what a real parent would have looked like, or an emotionally stable parent would have looked like in a lot of these little moments, then you'll begin to actually fully bust that illusion of thinking that it's okay, that this is natural for you to be this way. You're not naturally incomplete. They just tricked you along the way. And if you can sit there and imagine loving, caring, accepting parents' eyes that were willing to spend time with you and didn't need you to do anything, were literally just completely loved you in every second, no matter how you did or didn't do, or what you did and didn't do. If you can picture those loving, fully accepting eyes across from you through all these little moments in your childhood, then you'll fully begin to realize what you didn't get and how it was just them conditioning you and adding a pattern onto you. So the first step is to bust that illusion. The second step is to grieve. So even though the first step is realizing that those emotions aren't really yours, they were just foisted, just pushed onto you, you still internalized them, and you still missed out on a lot of those caring, fully accepting moments with your parents or caregiver. The next step is to fully grieve, and really, the more you can grieve and realize what you didn't get, the more you'll give yourself your full credit and your full worth. Because the absolute truth was, you didn't have to be this certain way or any of these things. They just push that onto you. To the degree that you can fully grasp and therefore fully grieve what you missed out on, this feeling of eternal safety that a child normally gets from their parents, if the parents aren't acting out some pattern that they probably got in childhood. To the degree that you can fully grasp that you started off perfect and enough, and that you were this whole time, that they just couldn't see it because they were blinded by their own patterns. That's the degree to which you'll fully see your real worth, and you'll start to feel whole. You didn't have to do anything. They just made you do that stuff. You grieve and fully grasp all these later stages in your life, which stemmed from a false worldview. To be honest, you'll probably never really fully grasp all the little implications and moments that stemmed from this false belief that you weren't enough already, that you had to do anything other than just exist as a small child. Then you'll learn. Then love won't be some reward system. It won't be some video game prize. Even friendship love, any of that, is not going to be something to be won. You stop auditioning for friendship, for love, trying to be the most or the smartest or any certain kind of way. The sexiest, the easiest to get along with, the snarkiest, whatever you gleaned you needed along the way to be acceptable. The one with the most friends, the one who nobody dislikes, the least complicated. You stop treating friendship or love like it's an interview that you need to be able to pass, or a test you need to pass. And you start to do the unthinkable. You let yourself be ordinary. You let yourself be truly actually seen, which will feel very vulnerable at first. It won't feel natural because the patterns are there. But that's what growth is all about. There was always a first time for everything. And this is just a new chapter that you can actually finally embrace. this is the next level that you really were hoping for, but really is just a return to your original, real, already whole level. You stop hoping others will choose you, and you just start choosing yourself. It's more like you don't need to choose yourself. It's just somebody who grew up with a feeling of safety, they don't have to decide constantly to choose themselves. So at some point, when you realize that it's safe to just be yourself, over time, you won't have to keep choosing it. It will be the new baseline. But until you fully grieve out all those ways you were screwed over and shortchanged, you'll never fully appreciate the realness, the authenticity of your original state of being before they got a hold of you super early on. I know with me, I wasn't even held as a baby, and so that's very early on. A newborn baby that's not even held. So from the very first day on earth or out of the womb, I was already being programmed into not expecting connection, to having to be a certain way to get connection, from having to earn connection instead of just my parents' loving eyes staring at me already just while I was lying there being and not doing anything. So you can see how all these little things can add up into a worldview. These are all patterns. And as infants, we grasp hard onto patterns. Anybody who's had a kid or been around kids, they know they cling to patterns. So we're making associations and lining up things as patterns the whole time without even trying. That's just how babies are. That's how small kids are. And that clinging in itself is the falsity, because it was rooted in this false pattern that they pushed onto you. Part of the grieving is to finally assert yourself and get angry about all the things you didn't get. That's part of the actual grieving. They didn't allow you to rail against it and be upset about getting shortchanged, partly because you didn't realize that you were getting shortchanged about it back then, or you didn't fully grasp it. So you basically had to shame parts of yourself instead of asserting all of yourself, which again would be the baseline. Assertion isn't necessarily this bravado of going forth and having to assert. Assertion is just asserting the right to exist, even just standing still without thought processes and having to worry about performing. Even just that beingness by itself, even just being there, feeling already whole, that's you already asserting your right to be there because it feels natural. You already know you have the right to be there. But since you were screwed out of that, or at least patterned out of it at different times in your life, there's a leftover lingering emotion, this grievance, this anger. It's natural to be upset about getting screwed over. You just didn't know to be that upset. You didn't realize the ways you were getting screwed over because you just thought they were normal-ish parents. At least early on, you thought that. So you're consuming all this content about down-regulating and paying attention to your breath and being zen and not being messy, when in reality, they pushed these things onto you, and you have to allow those actual natural reaction emotions, the anger, the sadness, the loneliness, you have to allow those to actually complete, because the more you're disowning and trying to be zen and be better, that's the more you're pushing those away farther and farther and adding to this hole. In searching for the way out, you're just digging yourself further into the hole. Then you start to ask yourself the real questions. What does love look like when it's not rooted in pain? What does it look like when it's not rooted in performance? You start learning to sit still and turn off the performance. You start to learn that it is okay to feel these uncomfortable emotions. They're uncomfortable because you push them away. You were made to push them away. You stop needing to be impressive and you start being real. And it'll hurt. It'll feel very foreign. But that's the hand you were dealt by these patterns, by your parents early on. And that's the only way through it. You stop needing to be impressive and you start being real. It'll feel awkward and hurt and feel uncomfortable because your nervous system doesn't know what to do with peace. It'll yearn for the comfortability of the highs and lows of performing and getting love, performing and getting love. You ache for the highs and lows of the chase, but you keep to the quiet. Because those patterns and the back and forth were the add-on. They aren't the true nature of things. And you slowly shift into not looking for love to rescue you from your own self, to fill this hole that you think you had all along, that your parents told you you had through their actions and through their micro expressions and through anything you had to do, or through their praise when you did something great, but their lack of affection or attention to you when you weren't doing something great. Or in love and friendship, if somebody walks away, you can let them, because your self-worth isn't tied to that person liking you. You don't need to pass the test to feel okay. You begin to realize that maybe the real you wasn't for them. And then you'll finally actually be open to find the person who is better suited for the real you. Then you can embark on a life of non-performing. And you can bless your kids one day with non-performing, which I'd argue is the greatest gift you can give somebody. You start to bless the people around you with the gift of non-performing. Because feeling whole and not needing to do something to feel whole is such an amazing feeling, because it's literally the square one of existence. We've lived our lives adding on all these things in certain ways to behave and all this to get the attention and love of people in our lives. And instead of just adding on, we were basically building on a shaky foundation. So we piled all these bricks on top of something that wasn't even there and called it a personality. So yes, this is going to be very open and you're going to feel very vulnerable. But this is the way out. They shut down your vulnerability. But confidence isn't just the ability to rush into a storm, rush and do all these brave things. Confidence is an ability to sit in negative emotions and not judge and not make a pattern out of it. It's just asserting your right to exist. Because here's the truth. You were never meant to be picked. You were meant to be seen. You were supposed to be known. You were supposed to be loved in your being and not in your doing. In your worst days as well as your best days. That's what your parents should have gotten you used to. And the moment you accept that absolute truth, you become powerful, and people's opinion doesn't hold sway over you anymore. Somebody's judgment of you doesn't affect your judgment of yourself. You realize that you were the one with that power all along. And your parents stripped it out of your hands. They grabbed it out of your hands when you were very young. But it's still been there all along. Okay, peace.